What's up, guys? This is Kephas.
The rotation assistant. It's been a big topic in the World of Warcraft community this past week, and honestly, it's been an interesting conversation. I've seen a lot of strong reactions, some very negative, but also many positive ones, and I've shared my own thoughts on it as well. This video is kind of a follow-up to that. One thing I want to point out is that a large portion of the player base has actually received this feature very well, many praising it as a powerful and necessary accessibility tool, and I'm genuinely grateful that so many people in the community are welcoming tools like this, which allow others to actually enjoy the game more fully. Now, there's a lot we can discuss about this tool. We can talk about the nature of the game itself, why it might need something like this, and what future design decisions could improve the game so that ideally we won't need tools like this. But for today, I just want to focus on what I would like from this tool. This is an accessibility tool, and accessibility is a complicated issue in video games. There's a kind of spectrum here. How far should a game go in making itself accessible to players? And at the other end of that spectrum, should we even be trying to make a game accessible for people who physically can't play it at all? There are obviously a lot of perspectives on this, and my perspective is that I believe video games shouldn't lose their integrity just to be more accessible. And by that, I mean that when a developer creates a game, they have a vision for it. They ask questions like, what is the purpose of this game? What do I want players to experience? If the integrity of that vision needs to be compromised in the name of accessibility, then that's where things get tricky. I'll give you an example. When Elden Ring was released and I was really getting into it, there were plenty of discussions about accessibility, and some were very valid, but there was also a strong push to change the game's identity to make it more accessible, to the point where people were asking for an easy mode and claiming that From Software was being ableist for not having one. I actually made a video about this topic, and I said that it felt dismissive to assume that I, as a visually impaired person, needed an easy mode in order to enjoy Elden Ring. Now, I know that I'm not the only disabled person out there. There are lots of different types of disabilities, but when you speak with such a large and broad brush, I felt like I was being dragged into that conversation. And while it would have been very helpful if I could have maybe pulled my health bar over my character's head, overall I didn't really have a problem with the game itself. Sure, my reaction times aren't the best, and I probably missed some things that I would have noticed if I could see better, but I didn't want Elden Ring to change its core design for me. The challenge in Souls games like Elden Ring is a big part of what makes them enjoyable. It's about overcoming difficult challenges, and that's the point of the game. It reminds me of a story from my high school days. I used to play volleyball in gym class, and I couldn't play very well because I just couldn't see the ball properly. If we were playing beach volleyball, it was a lot easier because the ball was bigger, slower, and more colorful. But regular volleyball, I just couldn't do it. And the gym teacher tried to be accommodating. He let me serve the ball and catch it if I wanted to, and he tried to include me. And I appreciated that, but the truth was, changing the rules for me messed with the flow of the game for everyone else, and I didn't want that. I'd rather sit out and just run laps. Was I excluded? Sure, but I didn't want to ruin the experience for everyone else, and I think that's an important point. Now, when you're talking about World of Warcraft, the integrity of the game's design is a lot more fluid. This is the same game, as many players have brought up, where Frost Mages used to have a one-button rotation, and still do in classic WoW. So how does all this relate to a tool like Rotation Assist? Some people might argue, well, if people in my group are using this tool, we won't succeed because of it. Or they might even say players will rely on this tool and won't learn how to play the game properly, making the game worse for everyone. But I don't think those are very strong arguments, and here's why. First, if the game requires you to perform at a certain level, regardless of your skill, you need to change how you perform. Whether you're using the rotation assistant or struggling because your UI isn't great or whatever else, you'll need to adjust. The fact is, I'm visually impaired. No matter how much that sucks, if I want to clear Mythic 20, for example, I have to perform at a high level. There's no getting around that. The reality doesn't change just because of my impairment. There may be ways to help me get there, but I haven't figured them out yet. And that's just the unfortunate truth of it. Rotation Assistant is not going to allow me to clear Mythic 20s. So if I'm using it, I won't be doing Mythic 20s. It's really that simple. My ideal view of any game is to have access to everything. I want to play the whole game, every aspect of it, to the best of my ability and enjoy as much of it as I can. If I can't do that because of my vision issue, that's unfortunate, but I'm always looking for ways to overcome that limitation. If there's no solution, that's okay too. And take Call of Duty for example. It's a shooter, and the characters are supposed to be camouflaged. If the solution were to make them bright red for accessibility, it would completely remove the immersion and defeat the point of the game's realistic war simulation. Being able to see and react is just part of the challenge of those types of games, and I don't think they should be modified to accommodate every specific need, including mine. In a game like World of Warcraft though, there's more than just combat. There's touring, leveling, questing, dungeons, lots of ways to experience the game. The key for me is UI elements that make it easier to know what I need to do. From a visually impaired perspective, that's one of the biggest improvements that could be made. For instance, when playing a fire mage, I use a weak aura for heating up and one for hot streak. These are simple cues that I can track, and I can position them around my character in the center of the screen. This gives me enough information without being too distracting. The problem with many weak auras and rotation trackers is that they're so busy that I end up focusing on them and losing track of the bigger picture. A good example of this difficulty is when I'm playing Grand Theft Auto 5. Driving can be hard because I need to check the minimap for directions while trying to avoid hitting other cars. That's a challenge because I can't look at both screens at once. Some games, like Crazy Taxi, use an arrow above the character's head, which helps a lot. The new swirlies in World of Warcraft, which are much easier to see, are a game changer for me because they don't overwhelm the screen but still help me track the action. If I use combustion, I can easily see when I'm no longer burning. It lets me know the effect is over and I can return to normal. These simple cues make a huge difference, especially when the screen is cluttered with so many different things to track. That's one of the big issues with WoW. There are too many elements scattered all over the screen and it's just not very intuitive. It can be overwhelming, especially when you're also managing encounters. Some people might view simplifying this as dumbing down the game, but I think WoW could benefit from dialing back on the number of things we need to track while adding depth to what we do. That way, you don't have to constantly monitor so many things, but still feel like the game has meaningful depth. I definitely don't want the game to lose the rewarding skill expression that comes with mastering it. But as a visually impaired player who loves accessibility, I just want to be able to participate fully. That's the balance I'm hoping for, keeping the game engaging and challenging while making it more accessible. So, as long as the game is the way it is, this accessibility tool, the rotation assistant, is going to be necessary, and it may always be necessary for a certain portion of the player base. That's why I think it's a good thing. And it's not just for people who are disabled either. One thing I've been hearing from some of the community is that this is just a tool for noobs, but you want to know what I say to that? Maybe it's a good thing, because newsflash, if there's one thing that World of Warcraft is lacking these days, it's noobs. Having said all that, what do I want from this tool? How far do I want Rotation Assistant to go? The first thing I want is for it to feel good, right? When I press the buttons, I still want to feel the impact of the rotation moving smoothly. It has to feel good when you're using it, and if upping the global cooldown makes it feel clunky, then it's not going to feel very satisfying. But if it's close enough and I'm not noticing too much of a difference, I can accept a slight reduction in damage. As long as it feels okay to use, that's the biggest thing for me. The second question is, how far should this tool carry me? I think this is a very important question, and with this being an accessibility tool, you're going to have a lot of different opinions on it. Some people are going to say that it should only help with leveling and maybe a bit of in-game world content, transmog farming, that kind of thing. And I'm going to push back against that just a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that I want this to carry me through Mythic 15s or whatever. I, again, think that skill expression is very important, and there needs to be content that tests what a player is capable of doing and how well they understand their class, and you can't do that if someone's using a rotation assistant, obviously. But the great thing about WoW is that it has a wide range of content with multiple levels of difficulty. For me, I'm okay if the tool helps me level and run dungeons as long as I'm doing okay. It's also worth noting that many factors impact DPS: gear, reaction time, latency, the fight encounter, even bad luck. So even without perfect rotation execution, I still find myself topping DPS charge when I'm using like a gnome sequencer macro, for example. You know, those macros are rarely flawless, but to be fair, no one else is flawless either. And many players have those same issues, and that's just the reality of it. So if the tool can help me with my rotation, I think it's okay if my performance is a little lower than someone doing it perfectly. I'm fine with that. As far as raiding goes, I definitely think it should be fine to use this tool in LFR and maybe even normal raids, especially if you're using it with a group of players that understand, or maybe even who are in a similar situation and your entire group is using rotation assist. I'm okay with that. Heroic raids though, they might be pushing it a bit, but I think it's still manageable depending on how well the tool works. Once we get into mythic content though, that's where I think the tool should stop. Mythic dungeons, mythic raids, those are where real skill and understanding of your class matter. Up until that point though, I'm fine if the tool is helping me through the content, like normal raids, heroic raids, and maybe even high tier delves. That's one of WoW's strengths though, with having so many layers of difficulty. The design integrity of the game is a lot more fluid than a game like Elden Ring. With Elden Ring, you have one level of difficulty. You either beat the boss or you don't. But with WoW, you have many layers, and for most players, when it comes to skill and achievement, the conversation is usually around mythic content. But you'll rarely hear people bragging about clearing normal or lower level raids. And that's where I'm coming from. I think there's room for tools like this and content that isn't focused on the most hardcore cutting edge difficulty. I'm not interested in sweating through that hardest content. I'm more about enjoying the game and progressing at my own pace. There are lots of players like me who share that mindset, and I'm glad that more challenging content exists for those who want it. In terms of accessibility, I'm fine with this tool as long as it doesn't compromise the essence of the game. What makes WoW WoW? And people should still need to understand their class and mechanics to succeed in the most challenging content, and I don't think that should change. The heart and soul of WoW for many players is the challenge, and I don't want to lose that. At the same time, I think we can create a space for accessibility tools without making the game unappealing to everyone else. I hope this gives you a better understanding of my perspective and what I would like to see this tool accomplish. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. As I get more hands-on experience, I'll have a more informed view of where the tool stands, but for now, that's where I'm at. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. But with all that being said, I'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is Kephas. Until next time.